So, um, to give you a little bit of a recap before we get into this, um, right now, in uh, May 24, 2022, we're in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. It's only lasts about 2 to 3 weeks, depending upon the length of the retrograde, but it happens roughly 4 times a year. Uh, happens 4 times a year. It's like a Mercury retrograde. Usually, what happens is communications go down, computers go a little wacky, appliances go a little wacky. Just it just happens. That that's what happens during the Mercury retrograde. So, I'm having computer problems. I had to send my computer to stream out. It just totally froze up in the beginning of the retrograde, and I'm having problems tonight. So that's why I kind of left early. Uh, but I'm back. So let's see. I just hope maybe it'll ease down a bit. But I had problems with that natal uh, Mars podcast. It was a little bit bumpy, kept getting warning signs and crazy stuff at my end. Um, and we're speaking about David Morales, the DJ, in uh, this podcast 10 about natal Mars. And apparently, talk about David Morales. I want to also bring in a different kind of disc jockey, because if I spoke about David Morales, I would have to speak about this guy, Frankie Knuckles, which is David Morales's protege. He was just an incredibly nice guy. Frankie Knuckles was a great disc jockey. My opinion, he was slightly different than David Morales, as to say what he disc jockeyed, what he put out there was a little bit more. To me, it was a little bit more jazzy, but there's nothing wrong with it. I like both of the guys. I like David Morales and I like Frankie Knuckles. Probably uh, evened out. I think they're really good disc jockeys. They mix pretty good and they played like a lot of old stuff. If you catch anything on YouTube with Frankie Knuckles, you should just listen to it. It's great, and give it some time. So I checked out Frankie Knuckles' uh, his natal chart, and he he is a Capricorn, January 18th, 1955. No time. Another one with no time. It's okay. Um, go down, and the sun was 27 degrees. His moon was in Scorpio, 28. Um, very brings in the underworld, different things. Um, things that are taboo, pretty much, I guess, at the time, uh, doing disc jockey kind of thing. House music was probably a little bit taboo, like underworld kind of thing. Um, it's a shame that it's a shame that we don't have his time, but apparently his natal Neptune, which this podcast should be about, is in Libra. And here it is. It's right here. This is Neptune. And it was squaring his sun, his natal sun. Um, yeah, this this is unfortunate, but I mean, I didn't know the guy, but he did pass away in 2014, and he passed away with diabetes. Um, uh, Neptune. Well, before I get into Neptune, I just want to say fastly because we got the chart up. He has a grand trine. He has two grand trines. One with the natal. This is natal Mars. It's trins his moon. His moon trins looks like his Uranus and his Jupiter were conjunct, and they go back to his natal Mars. And the other one, his natal Mars goes to Saturn, and Saturn goes to natal uh, Jupiter and Uranus. Going back to his natal Neptune over here squares his Jupiter and squares his natal Sun. Mm. Um, let's see, his Chiron is very close. His Chiron is over here. This is Chiron. Ah, look at that. His Chiron is conjunct to his natal Sun, which he was, pretty much he. Chiron is an asteroid. I'm going to get into it, but people got different interpretations about Chiron. And to me, Chiron brings like the asteroid of healing. A lot of people say, a lot of astrologers say, it brings old wounds back, and I've seen that. I've seen that Chiron return is when you turn 51. But okay, fine, whatever. I seen Chiron in natal charts bring in bring in like when they're in a special kind of conjunction, especially with Frankie Knuckles. Frankie Knuckles was popular, and especially in New York with his disc jockeying. He was like one of the best. He was like one of the first to do house music and do all those kinds of things in those mixing. He was one of the first, if not, he was the first. Um, um, I don't know. Um, I'm going to be flat out honest with you. When Neptune is a dicey planet, it brings in a certain energy that is just really interesting. If it doesn't work out right in a chart, if it doesn't look right, probably it says more than anything else. So whether or not, you know, it, it's hard to explain. Mm. Um, I don't know. Let me give me a few minutes here. Let me think about this, and let me show you. Um, let me show you Frankie Knuckles. Um, there he is. Here's he's on the BBC radio in 2015. I think this must have been aired right after he passed away, because I think he passed away in 14. Uh, from what I heard, he's just a really nice guy. Oh, it says in season 2015. Here's his last set. I never listened his you know, I never had listened to. I mean, I'm not so deep in it that I know what his last set sounded like, but besides the point. Okay, let's just go back to that. All right. Natal Neptune is a funny thing. Uh, one of the birth charts, Neptune talked to me a lot, was Carrie Fisher's. I think about Carrie Fisher's natal chart because Carrie Fisher, I mean, gosh, can you imagine being her throughout her whole life? She had to be, known like she was Princess Leia. I mean, wherever you went, this probably wasn't even like, you know, it wasn't Carrie Fisher, it was Princess Leia. She was no, that was just the woman. She uh, substance abuse. Um, uh, uh, having a tough time tonight. Um, have patience. Chart my mind. Should have had it prepared, but sorry about that. It's just been one of those crazy nights. Trying to get this. All right. Here it is. So, if you're Carrie Fisher, here it is. Carrie Fisher's natal chart from actual theme. Neptune, natal Neptune, natal Neptune. It's natal Neptune is it rules Pisces, 12th house. Brings in the head, the mind. It is the ocean. It could people mostly with Pisces people, Pisces natives, they dive in to relationships and they give them all they can, even though, mind you, you might not think it, because they are very quiet, um, you know, in some term, quiet. Um, they they're very laid back, very quiet people, highly creative. Um, depending upon where natal Neptune is, you might find that it flips. In some sense, it flips the house that it's at. So it flips the the characteristics of those houses. So wherever natal, you know, uh, if you have natal Neptune in the first, you probably have some really interesting perspectives about your life, your image, your self-image. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Could be, very good, or it could be, very unique. The second house of money, yeah, your principles of money might be flipped. You might have a strange or an unique perspective of money and material things. The third house of communication, you might be a writer, you might be like a science fiction writer, or sometimes some like highly creative person in writing or communication. Fourth house brings in a very unique stand of what your family might be. It might be a very unique way of having a family, or in the 70s, here's a very good interpretation of Neptune, natal Neptune being in the fourth house. There's a whole generation that was born with Sag, having Neptune in the fourth house. Sag, Neptune being in Sag in the fourth house, and there's a whole generation of people that have this, and right now they're in their late 40s, early 50s, and usually back in the 70s, and this is coming around, late 70s, early 80s, there was like a really high divorce rate in the United States, and this high divorce rate caused a lot of children to go home with nobody home. Their moms or dads might been single and might have been working, and they would have to work double because the divorce rate was so high back then. So they were called the latchkey kids, because they would come home and they would have the keys to go home, and actually that was it. you know you know they were born with Neptune with Sag in the fourth house. It flipped their family life considerably. So if your natal Neptune is in the fifth, you're highly creative. Sixth or seventh, you have some interesting experiences with people in regards to relationships and relations and friends. Eighth or ninth, you might be like a teacher, or somebody who has very interesting perspectives of the taboo, and you might like really like to research things, especially if natal Neptune was in your eighth. Um, 10th and 11th, your career might be very unusual. Doesn't mean it's bad. Just, an unusual, a very unique type of career that, you know, maybe you're an actress or something like that, like Carrie Fisher, who has her natal sun conjunct to her natal Neptune. And she went through all of her life being considered Princess Leia. So it's like I said, astrology is just really interesting stuff. I mean, the mythology behind it is just extremely unique. If you got Neptune in 12th, it's pretty fixed. Neptune is very tricky. It flips the houses. It flips what house it's in. You know, it does stuff like that. Here it is. Neptune was going in from Libra to Scorpio, and she was born 1956. Neptune stays in a sign for 14 years approximately, sometimes 13, and it just her sun was going over Neptune, just going over Neptune. That's called a star point. A star point, because the sun that day um, was going over uh, a star, so it's called a star point. Her Mercury was at a famous degree. It's very close to being 15 degrees, which would be considered, because she was a Libra, so she was a cardinal sign. Uh, she was close to being 15-degree Mercury, natal Mercury, so that would indicate that it was like a anaretic degree. Her Mercury was anaretic degree. So that's a sign of extreme fame. Her natal Venus was conjunct to her Jupiter in the eighth, um, which I guess it it sent out, like, Jupiter expands, and Venus is the femininity planet. Yeah, she had a grand trend. She has a couple of grand trends with Jupiter and Venus and her AC and her moon. See the triangle, grand trend. Yeah, her moon was in Taurus, so she was meant to bring in something beautiful to the world. Her Mars was in Pisces, very sensitive. Um, Mars in Pisces is a seventh individual, and her Uranus was in the seventh. And I think Uranus, like I said, brings in, brings out. So it's in the seventh. And I think she had a lot of relationships with a lot of a lot of a lot of people, if I'm correct. It's a nice chart, but it's tough. She went through a lot. Hmm. Anyway, let's see if I could do another podcast. I'm really having a lot of problems with the speed and tendency to make them short. But I'll be back. Thanks.